Okay, welcome to Joe Blow, week 5, 7 weeks to go.
Here we are.
We've got Johnny over in London, coming to us via Riverside. He's over there. What are you over there for, Johnny?
Just to look beautifully young for you guys. I am over here for a Black Sheep event happening tomorrow morning. So it's London Marathons on the weekend, and we're doing this collaboration with a local London brand in Battersea Park, which is like a glorified shakeout run. So we should have 100 plus people there. And then do some stuff in the expo on Saturday or Friday and Saturday. And then I might do a little bit of a bandit run in the London Marathon. I won't do the full thing, but I might do the half.
Feels a bit weird, me sitting on a couch looking at you lying in a bed. Is that a bed you're in?
This is a white couch.
Oh, okay.
A white couch.
It's a beautiful room. No expense spared. All right, let's get going. I thought we'd start with a bit of training questions. I know you guys love to talk about training, and it's been high on your agenda. It's like, Joe Blow, Joe, we really want to talk about our training because we love training. So I've got a couple of questions. One is, so tell me about, like, I'm on your program as well, so I'm struggling and it's fucking beep. It's hard and hell and long, and I don't even know how you guys are getting through it because I'm an elite athlete, 9-time Ironman and 3-time Hyrox, and it's pretty tough. What's the highlight of the week in terms of training? Like sessions, individual sessions, days. Have you had any real highlights, achievements, anything that you thought, oh, that's fantastic?
Yeah, I had a highlight on Monday because I did my 5K time trial on Monday instead of last Saturday. And I PB'd my 5K. So I got sub 20, so 19 minutes 50. So that was a big highlight for me. So I think that would have been 33 seconds faster roughly than what it was when I did it in January, February.
So that
Can
means
I just say
all...
that she is possibly the only person in the world that's run a marathon 2 days before a 5K PB.
Can I also say that means out of all of us, Yops is the only one that hasn't gone under 20 minutes for 5K?
Yeah, but you don't count. Yours was 2 decades ago, over 2 decades.
So there's two of you that haven't done it this decade.
Oh, okay. Johnny, you got any highlights?
Well, my week's been pretty interrupted just because I left on Monday night, and it's now Monday night Australian time, and it's now Thursday night London time. Haven't slept for over 48 hours, so it's been a bit interrupted. I would definitely agree with you. Like one thing with this program is like they're 2 hour plus sessions, so it does really. What it's forcing me to at the moment is to get to bed at like 8 o'clock, which I've never done before ever. I'm normally been like quite a late worker, and that's when I can kind of be creative. But it's forced me to get to bed early. Hasn't really helped the kid Miller to sleep too much, but at least I'm getting maybe 6 hours sleep at night. So that's probably been the biggest thing. But like you're starting training at just before 4, and then you're out just after 6. So it's quite a long slog. The biggest one this week though for me, and this is a little bit of Dexter's fault, is there was on Wednesday, I think it was, boss. There was like a kind of a back-to-back Metcon session that they did, and that was brutal. Partly because Dexter prescribed over 200 kilos in the sled, so there was like a 30-minute time cap, and I did 43 minutes. And I sent him a message and said, mate, I'm like, I don't know where I went wrong, but I didn't feel I went that bad. But 202 kilos on a sled is fucking heavy. and yeah, it was a typo.
I was devastated. I didn't make the cap. I only got to round 3, and I just thought, my God, I'm so far away from these guys. So that might be a good little segue, Johnson, into. So you didn't have any highlights, mate? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, that was.
Travel and
Yeah,
everything.
I mean, to be honest, like to do a session, if I just did a session on 200 kilos worth of sleds, like that would probably be good in itself. So I was fine with that. Like I've cut up my hand quite a bit, so I kind of need to do overweighted stuff with that. And not, like, yeah, it wasn't particularly a highlight. Like I was a little bit sore from Saturday's park run just because I haven't done that much hard stuff. So, I've kind of been going a little bit easier on the running this week as well.
So what sucked this week? What was a low light in terms of training?
I had to take a rest day this week, and I hate rest days.
Oh, it's because someone did a marathon.
Yeah, so I had to take my body started. I've gotten really good at listening to my body, that when I need to slow down, I slow down. But my body's really good at giving me really specific signals that you need to stop. And so after doing the marathon on Friday, training on Saturday, running on Sunday, and then the 5K on Monday, and then I had CrossFit training on Monday afternoon, my quad pulled up really tight and I felt like I'd put a tear or strain in it. And so as soon as I felt that, I stopped and I got an appointment with my physio. And so I took Tuesday completely off training. I didn't do any zone 2. I didn't go for a light bike. I just did a couple of small walks. So that for me is a huge stop. It was good for my body and it's good for my mind to do that, but it's a low light for me because I love training. I love exercising. I love moving.
I'm amazed that you didn't have more DOMs than what you did post-marathon. One thing I've been meaning to ask you, Katie, is how do you manage your training around work? Like, what are your work hours? Like, I get the feeling that it's fairly unstructured, but like you're doing morning and afternoon sessions. Like, how do you fit it around your time in with work?
Yeah, so I don't start at 4. I don't do start at 4 a.m. training sessions very often, like you guys, but that's because I do about an hour and a half of training in the morning. So normally from 5 till 6:30. Then I get into the office generally between 7 and 7:30. I work until lunchtime, 12 or 1, and then I normally take an hour to 2 hour lunch break. So because I've started so early, I can sort of fit an extra long lunch break in to go do my second training session, which is either at FitAs, which is just down the road from the office, or I drive to West End, and then I go back to the office for another 4 hours of work, and so I get the rest of my day in there, and then normally leave work between 5 and 6, and then go home, eat and sleep, and nothing else.
What made you think that the marathon was A, a good idea, and B, not going to get you so injured that you were going to miss 2 or 3 days or a week of training? Did you just sort of have a guess at it, or?
Yeah, I didn't. I just hoped that I wasn't going to get injured off the back of it, and I probably didn't think about it that deeply that I could get injured. I was just like, oh, my body's strong. I do enough training. It should be okay. I didn't think it was a good idea, but it was something fun to do, and often fun things aren't good ideas to do, and that's where you get your most excitement and everything from. So Jimmy wanted to do it, and I'm a yes person, so I wanted to do it with him.
Hey, Johnny's back. Okay, we lost Johnny.
I heard that. I was just struggling with my internet.
Yeah, you are cutting out at times. We can hear every second or third word, but we sort of get where you're coming from, Johnny. Johnny, any lowlights for you?
Yeah, I think probably the last 7 days, I've probably gone into the red more times than I'd probably like, starting off with Saturday. And that's probably one thing to probably mention post last podcast. Saturday we did a 5K run and into this massive 60-minute Metcon, and I was absolutely a shell of a human being after the 5K run. So I went pretty red line in that, and then Wednesday I was pretty red line in that as well. So it's kind of back to back, and then into a big day of travel. I try to do a little session in Dubai as well. So, it's it hasn't been the best week in terms of training. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, we all have jobs, right? So it's got to kind of make it work, and it is what it is. So wouldn't necessarily call it low lights.
Question, probably for both of you. How often do you go into the red zone through the week in training wise? Like, do you find that you're impacted if you do it twice a week? Do you do it regularly, daily? And then does that flow on into your work environment? Do you find you're significantly impacted at work when you go into that red hard training sessions?
Yeah, I mean, I probably divide it into there's going hard, and then there's going to the level where, from a scientific perspective, it's really fatiguing your neuromuscular system. So for me, it's on Saturday, it was, I think subjectively I don't want to do this, and I've just feel like a shell of a human being. It's it's a bit more than being tired, but it's also where you're shaking, you get to the afternoon and you're still recovering. If I'm doing that once a week, I would say that that's probably borderline too much. Just because especially with the volume that we're doing of 2 hours plus a day, I think it's too hard to back up, and then you just risk overtraining. So yeah, I mean, with all the conditioning that we do, it's hard stuff every day. So it's not like there's ever an easy day per se, but it's just making sure that you're not to the level where you're just completely exhausted when you leave the gym and you can barely walk up the stairs.
All right, let's move on from training. I've had enough of it.
Yep.
No, my main struggle is just food. It's just not about me. So, Katie Brock, so you have had all these amazing results in CrossFit. You've had amazing results. No, you've won stuff. I've seen you on Instagram with all your towels and your trophies, and you've won events, and you're just like a top CrossFitter. Thanks. So in 3 years' time, what does failure look like in Hyrox, and what are you looking to achieve in Hyrox? In 3 years, if we're sitting here, what would you be happy with? And please, I'm not going to accept, I want to be the best version of myself, as long as I give 100%. I don't want any of that.
Do you know that was where it was going to go to?
I know. I'm not having it. I'm not having any of that. In 3 years' time, we're sitting here. Put it out there. Give me some idea of what you want to achieve, and you'd be happy and go, that was pretty good.
Personally and individually, I've said this to Dexter, but I'm just going to say it out loud, and so then it's in the universe, is that I'd love to make the Elite 15 as an individual. That would be pretty amazing, and I think I've got the capabilities to do it, and where I'm sort of seeing my running progressing, I think I can do it. So, sure. I'd love to do that.
That's awesome.
When is there a timeline for that, Katie?
3 years, Johnny. Please listen.
I'd love to have definitely done it by 3 years' time. Probably within the next in a year's time, I'd love to either have made it or to be very close to making it. At least in the top 30 to 20 in the world, and be on the brink of making it, knowing that I just need to get maybe one more fast time to make my average fast enough to get in there.
And Johnny...
And what...
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you go, boss.
No, it's okay, mate. You want to take over? Or? I've written some notes about you, and I ended up calling you the almost man.
Yeah.
You were almost a golf pro. You were almost a triathlon elite member. So I'm trying to get a handle of, this is all so new to you. You're an amazing runner, and obviously coming from that background. Is this... I don't know how to phrase this because I wrote 1,000 questions and none of it sounded right, but hopefully it comes across to you. Is this redemption for you? Is it just a hobby? Is it you... Because your kids didn't see the triathlete pro you were and the amazing golfer. And what is this for you? And I guess it feeds through the same question of, what do you want to achieve, given that, you've come from a very elite background?
Yeah, it's definitely still a hobby. I'm 38. I'm nowhere near as young as Katie. So I do have to be realistic. I think if you ask Dexter that question, I think he's a little bit more positive about it. Like, for instance, we've had quite a few conversations this week about, my time's been, the best in Hyrox, right? But to kind of counter that, like, boss, you would know that in triathlon, there's a lot of good runners that don't necessarily then pass it through to the Ironman run or whatever. So that doesn't necessarily equate to a good run. But that being said, it's a massive challenge for me. It's something that I genuinely believe I can do well at. Whether that means, doing well within like kind of local pro races or that sort of thing, I'm not sure. I don't think I'd ever be able to get to an elite 15 perspective just because of the time that I've got to be able to devote to it. But it's funny, like an interesting thing happened on Saturday during a session, and I was speaking with Gussie, and I said to him, just on a similar vein of your questioning, boss, of just basically saying, like, I've never committed to something so much that I'm so shit at. And I know that sounds quite arrogant to say, but when you think about whether it's golf, triathlon, running, like I've had some sort of semblance of hope there. Like I was quite good at it. This is a hard thing to say when you guys can't see me, so I hope it's coming through in my voice. And I was just like I've never done something where I'm so shit at, but I've committed so much energy to it. But I think that's Hyrox in itself, right? Because like if you do a session like Saturday, there's a few variables there, like doing a hard 5K before, which, I was just exhausted from it. But it's also just a sport of everyone genuinely has a weakness, like right through to the top people. Like there's no one athlete, and it would be hard to imagine that, an athlete would just be like the top of the game across all disciplines. Like you see the guys that are good at the movements, that they don't breed the natural runner, and vice versa. And so I think you've always got at least one athlete, at least one weakness in all these athletes, which is what Gussie reminded me of, and Dexter subsequently reminded me of. So I've kind of battled that kind of that dilemma that you were talking about this week, boss, in my own mind, but have kind of landed as of Thursday, Friday this week of like, okay, it's actually a positive because it's kind of the definition of the sport. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, that's good. How about though, like Katie did, put your balls on the line.
Yeah.
Give me something.
What's
a great result for Johnny in let's call it, let's do 1 year and 3 years. If you keep going.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to give you like my goal for Chicago, as like an immediate goal. Not that you asked for it, and then for maybe a year's time. So
can you give me your goal for Chicago, Johnny?
Yeah. So for Chicago, I'd love to do the same, if not better, time than I did in Melbourne. And I know that seems unrealistic because it's
get this
it's
fucking doubt out of your head, mate. I'm going to throw that laptop on the street.
Anyway, so there's like a really simple vein dilemma in that goal of like, I don't want to put all this training and be on fucking social media for 4 months and do a worse time on paper than I did in Melbourne, when no one knows that it's, you're going up weight and it's significant. Like no one has that context. So I want to do that. But I also genuinely believe my race in Melbourne was just full of crap. Like there was so much stuff in there that I was so far below, what I was doing in training, but also on some of the stations I'd never actually practiced them in the first place. So say for instance, like during this week, I pulled a 202 kilogram sled, but in Melbourne, I could barely pull 150 kilos. No, 100 kilos, sorry.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of what I'm pointing to. So in Melbourne, same, if not better than the time I did in Melbourne, albeit going up in the category. And then in a year's time, I would love to be somewhere close to close to 80 kilos. I'm now 75. Excuse me. And break in 60 minutes in the pro category.
Fuck yes.
That's awesome, Johnny. I love it. We're done. No. Hey, Johnny, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Saturday, you were in a world of hurt, and I came up to you on the bike, and you said to me, you looked like you, I don't even know what word we can use because this is going to go to the public. We used a few nasty words, but you looked pretty sick. Do you, and you said to me, I'm about to cry. This is as bad as Melbourne. Can you, A, take me through that, and B, let me know where do you go when you're that bad and what gets you through it?
Well, I mean, this is what I was trying to articulate before, and perhaps I did a really bad job at it. So I'll have another crack. Like I genuinely, and I think Katie would be the same, and I think to a certain degree you're the same, boss. Is like I genuinely love to hurt myself, but it has to be within control. Like there's hurting yourself and reaching your limit for that session, but then there's that point where you're physically exhausted and you're just not able to get out the same watts or reps or speed or whatever it is. And I think when you've done it enough, when you're doing these kinds of sessions every day, you know when you've just gone beyond your point, whether it's a fueling thing, whether it's just your muscles are exhausted, whatever it is. And unfortunately, you know, I felt pretty good up until, you know, so this was a Metcon, a 60-minute Metcon, but every 20 minutes, so 20, 40 and 60 was a set of 50 wall balls. And so it was effectively divided into three. And for the first third, up until the wall balls, I was feeling really comfortable. But then the wall balls absolutely fucking killed me, and I was completely out of, not out of my comfort zone, just out of control. And that's I think the trick with Hyrox. So when I was saying it feels like Melbourne, with Melbourne, I, you know, was leading through the ski erg, leading through the sled pull, and then the sled push, and then got to the sled pull in the lead, and then went from 1st to 15th, was absolutely fucking wrecked. Barely got the sled across the line on the 4th length, and just felt like a crawl home, and it didn't feel like racing, to be perfectly honest. And that's what Saturday felt like. It just felt like I wasn't able to push my body to the point where, you know, I wanted to, or I knew I could, or just because I was exhausted. So,
as an athlete, that's the hardest point that you get to, and I think you kind of alluded to it a bit there. Is that point that you don't feel confident or in control of what you're doing, and that at that point you then spiral. Your heart rate goes out of control. That even no matter what level of exhaustion you're in, if you're in control, then you can work through that exhaustion. But if you're not in control, you lose your heart rate, then that exhaustion feels so much worse. And I think that almost, that's the point you get to. I know that feeling so much.
I was going to ask you that. Thank you for the response. I was just going to ask, do you ever get to those stages where you're just wrecked and you're going, and all the demons are in your head, screaming?
I think
Johnny, sorry.
This is the biggest misconception, I think, with people saying, "Oh, he can just take himself to another level," and I don't actually think that's the case, because if you look at the very best athletes in the world, particularly endurance athletes, I mean, Kipchoge would be the best example of it. He'd finish a marathon and break the world record, or even do a sub 2 hour marathon, almost smiling and like doing pistols to the crowd, right? So most of the time, the best athletes that are doing their best performances are the ones that look like they're in the most control. It's rarely, you know, the best athlete achieving their best performance, getting across the line where they look absolutely shelled, or they've been, you know, for the last kilometre of the race, they've been absolutely shelled. Like that rarely happens, or it rarely gets their best or their personal best out. So I think it is a little bit of a misconception that these athletes can just go to the well. Like they obviously can, because that's kind of ingrained in their training. The training is a place where they're getting used to pushing their body to a certain level or degree. But you know, most of the time, like, to get the best performance out of yourself, it's say if a Hyrox is for 60 minutes, it's ensuring that you're allocating your energy across that 60 minutes where you'll get into the end of the wall balls. You know, in Katie's instance, you know, she could do 100 unbroken, like making sure that you can do 100 unbroken, right? That won't happen if Katie's completely fucking exhausted by the time she gets to the wall balls. So I think it's, again, hopefully that makes sense, but it's, I guess I point to like my best sessions and my best races have always been where it's almost felt the easiest.
Mm.
So with both of you, what are your greatest one strength as an athlete? Katie? What's your biggest strength?
This is a really tough one. I think it depends. It depends on what sport that I'm in at that time. But I would say it's the ability to find where my strength is and then push myself to as far as I can go within that strength. So in CrossFit, it used to be the endurance stages, and I would really make sure I'd capitalize on that. So my strength was finding that area of strength and then pushing it. In Hyrox, it's finding where I'm strong and pushing those areas and finding it and just pushing myself to become excellent in something so that then it can become a strength for me. That's not a really good answer.
No, I like that. Yeah, no, that's good. What about you, Johnny?
Well, according to Gussie, my only strength last week was running.
We'll just leave it at that then. All right, next question.
I disagree with that.
No,
I disagree. Yeah, carry on.
No, I would say probably my consistency. You know, albeit this week I'm, you know, been anything but consistent, but I feel like I can back up, and I love what I love training, and it's never a chore to get there. Like it's sometimes there's fatigue and that sort of stuff, and it's more of a question of like, fuck, do I actually go as hard as what's prescribed? But yeah, consistency is probably my strength.
What I'd almost say, and this is going to go off maybe on a tangent, and it would probably be the case for all three of us. Boss, I'm going to include you in this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Because we've all done multiple different sports. And so almost our strength is putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations where we're not flourishing, when we're not great at what we're doing, to be able to learn and then grow from that and to get better at that. I mean, we've each all changed sports. Like, I mean, Johnny, you're a golf, and then you did your triathlons, and then now you've gone to Hyrox. You've changed to something that you're not super strong at. You haven't stayed in that comfortable state, and you've moved yourself into an uncomfortable state to continue to grow. And that is a strength in itself, because a lot of people don't do that. They stay their one sport, they stay their one path, their one career, and stay in that comfortable state. But we all have the strength to put ourselves into an uncomfortable state, whether that be in sport or business or life or what. But we have the strength to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations and thrive and grow and get better at that sport or create new friendships and just be a better human. And that, I think, is a strength in itself.
Yeah, it almost touches on a little bit of what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, Katie, where, you know, we'll kind of layer in this discussion over the top of, you know, performance at work, and that kind of how that flows into like just being able to figure out how to do shit.
Yeah.
I definitely see those two aspects, because I would definitely agree with you. You know, that's something that I enjoy about myself, of being able to, like, you know, go from one sport to another sport and feel like I can excel at. My wife actually flicked me through a Instagram post last night, which kind of speaks to some of this stuff, where basically it says, I've got it in front of me, that 93% of female executives earning over $100,000 a year had sporting backgrounds. And it just goes on to show that girls who play sports become women who lead. And I think, you know, that's just not something for women. that's not just something for women and girls. It also applies for men as well. So, yeah. Anyway, I think there's some elements in there that definitely all three of us can talk to of like how important sport and multiple sports have been in terms of our careers and lives.
And I just think it's fantastic the way you guys have kept saying all three of us. It's just made me feel good inside. One little bit before we get to the final part, I want to go back to the Elite 15. And I've got questions for both of you. Johnny,
Yep.
is it the reason you can't make the Elite 15, are you putting it down to age, time that you have, or this whole doubting yourself thing, or is it a bit of everything? Like, what would it take for you to make that?
Oh, look, I need to do a race at pro weight first before I can have any sort of outlandish goal here, and that's not me not being not dreaming, but it's a reality. Like, I've only done Hyrox at an open weight, right? So I want to do unfortunately my first time at pro weight is at Worlds, but that's fine. Then I do it again in Sydney. So I think I'm going to get a pretty good yardstick within the next couple of months or month of where I'm at and what I need to improve on. I don't think I'll be nailing everything by then, but I think it'll give me a fairly good indication of how I can tolerate that sort of weight, how I can run off the back of it, how intelligent I am racing. I think it's going to be a matter for me of like trying to preserve myself as much as possible for the end. So hopefully, what I'm looking forward over the next couple of months is to get through these two and be in a place where I have that level of enthusiasm to keep going and go even further. And I feel if I'm in that place and I'm not defeated by it, then who knows what will be there. Hopefully it won't just be a 60-minute. It'll be something a little bit more, and whatever that is, who knows. But I'm trying to be a little bit realistic with it at this stage.
So what's realistic? Chicago 64 minutes, so you'd be very happy with that, and Sydney 60 minutes.
Sydney in a year's time, 60 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, in a year's time. Okay. Katie, so Elite 15 girls.
Mm-hmm.
If we were doing it by numbers, where are you now? Are you like 50, 60, 40, 80?
I think I actually don't know exactly where I'm at.
Roughly?
I'd be in the top 100
Yep.
at least. I don't know where I'd be in that though.
So what does it take, and how long does it take from there to get to, from you're 100, you're 90 to 15?
Yeah. So I've roughly got it, my time in Brisbane was an hour 7:30, 20.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to get at least 5 minutes off my time. So I've got to get my time down to roughly 102 or sub 102.
Yep.
Which is completely possible. I've already taken 5 minutes off my time from when I first did my first race. So the goal for Worlds is to go sub 105.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there it's to get another 3 minutes off my time, which will be interesting. So Worlds, I think, is going to be the big checker to know roughly where I'm at. It's going to be a good gauge because I'll have people with me ideally the whole race, whereas Brisbane, I ran that by myself. So I kind of took my foot off the pedal. So Worlds will be my gauge with how close I am to my 102 time that I'm sort of aiming for. And then from there, it will be adjusting accordingly. The big thing for me is just mainly my running and then just maximising a couple of the stations. But so it's my running time I've just got to get down, which is happening.
So the 5 minutes you took off from your first time to the 107, whatever you did to 107,
yeah.
Is that majority running?
Yeah, pretty much.
So is it 70% running improvement, 30% workout?
Yeah.
Do you have to do the same percentage to get to 102?
Yeah, probably. My running splits in my first race were and the running times are hard to know because of the rock zone and everything like that, but roughly my average runs for my first race in Sydney were like a 450 average, and then in Brisbane they were a 410 or 415. So I've got to get them down to pretty much at 4 or below 4 averages, and then just maximising my station. So like the farmers carries, do it unbroken, walls, get them to the point that hopefully they are now, have them unbroken, and just maximising where I can. I'm strong in the sleds, I'm pretty good on the ergs, so yeah.
Super. All right, let's finish off with some battery work. I'm going to change the battery work. Let's try something different.
Yep.
Can you split your batteries between just one battery for training, okay, just for training, and then one battery for everything else in life? Give me 2 batteries. So we want your battery for training. Just think about your training.
Yeah. So my battery for training at the moment will be pretty high. Like I reckon it's the one that's higher. So at 80%, my training's going really good. I'm feeling strong. I'm feeling fit. I have a slight lower week this week after everything that happened. So my training battery is at 80, 90%. I'm feeling strong. My everything else battery would be pretty low. I'd almost say it would be below 50%, 40, 50%, if that. I'm really struggling because I'm putting all my time and effort into my training at the moment, knowing that I've got Torian in 5 weeks and Worlds in 7. That's where I'm focusing things because I don't want those events to go badly. So everything else out of that's kind of falling off. I'm struggling to get enjoyment out of work at the moment because I haven't got that much energy for it, or I do, but I'm just not getting the satisfaction from it. I'm dropping friendships, or I'm just struggling to juggle all those balls. So that battery is very empty at the moment.
Okay.
Which is hard. Like I've gone home this week and cried to my housemate multiple times because I feel lost. And I, probably similar to you guys, is that career and life and everything's a massive part, and I don't feel good when I'm not succeeding in my career or not moving that needle.
So I guess it comes still back to, what are you doing all this for? It's ruining the rest of your life. But you're still striving, and I get all that, but like your battery is going from, your life battery is just dropping because of this. Are you doing too much? You're doing Hyrox, you're doing CrossFit, and is it going to be? When do you sort of go, shit, this is ruining my life a little bit?
It's a really tough question and hard question to ponder. I probably go back to that life is in waves, and life's not about balance, and you can't have everything great at once. And some people do. They just run that mediocre, everything's good, everything's fine. But as a high performer, life is never balanced. You have your highs and lows, and things come in waves. And you have your waves where you put more effort into your training, and then you have waves where you put more effort into your career and everything like that. And I'm just in that wave where, in that time of the year where a lot of more time and effort, and I get more joy, or I just put more into my training. And I know that maybe in 6 months' time, 6 or 8 months' time, I'll come back to the career and friends side of things, and I'll put more effort into that. And that would probably be the only way I could really answer that side of things.
Just one more before I go to Johnny. So your life is 50-50.
Yeah.
Your training is 80-20.
Yeah.
If we go back to the one battery, where does it sit? Because it was at 80-20.
Yeah, that was
a few weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. So
it
where's that now?
Dropped back. So it would be, if I do really quick maths, it would be 65%.
Okay.
That's the accountant in me coming out.
65-35. So you've dropped off.
Yeah.
So you're comfortable that this is a wave, and you're not sending yourself into a hole
100%,
that you can't get out of.
Because there is an end in sight in terms of where I sort of see the next 6 to 8 months coming out, and what I sort of have planned in the pipeline, knowing that my training after Worlds in Sydney can drop back slightly and potentially have a bit more balance to it, where that I know that I'm not peaking up for a competition, but rather I'm sort of potentially in off season and just maybe mainly focusing on doing running at that point. So
Brilliant. I love all that, Johnny. I'm looking forward to hearing yours, and you better don't get technical with me.
No, I loved all that, and I think this is precisely why I think we need training discussion in this podcast, because it's so important in terms of unpacking what the fuck's going on in the rest of our lives.
You don't want to hear about my dating life, Johnny?
No, I don't.
Okay. Move on.
Because and I loved how Katie just described it before. It's like our lives are out of balance, right? Because I think we live our lives like we are training and competing. We're constantly walking this threshold of trying to eke out this bad performance, and always erring, ebbing and flowing over like too much, too little, too much, too little, too much, too little. Sometimes we get the balance right, but as Katie said, often the balance isn't there, right? And so it's funny because I'm probably now the inverse of what Katie was talking about. Like this week, I'm pretty fucking drained, for like obvious reasons, for traveling and all that sort of stuff. But like, there's no way that come tomorrow that I would go and like wreck myself in a session, because my body's just not there at the moment. And then on the inverse, on the other side in my life, I'm now, where I was 40, 50 the last few weeks, I'm probably 60, 70 at the moment, for some like really interesting reasons, and I'm happy to go into detail about it, but like...
Sorry, can I just stop you there? So sure. Your life battery, you're saying 60, 70, and your training is 90?
No, my training is probably 40, 30 at the moment, sitting here right now, because I'm pretty tired, and I think Katie was saying she's at around 80. And so in terms of my life, like I feel like I'm working on a lot of the things that we've been discussing over the last few weeks, but where I feel like where some good barometers for me in terms of my life and happiness is when I'm proactively communicating with people close to me, like whether it's Kelly or friends, to a degree of like, not just the stuff that's going well in my life, but the stuff that I'm struggling with, and getting them involved in that stuff, because I'm notoriously really bad at compartmentalizing my life, not trying to shift burden or anything, or any of the shit that I'm going through onto others. And that comes through of me just simply not communicating with other people, because I'm almost like trying to protect them. But the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a far better job at like, okay, like say for Kelly, of like, okay, this is the stuff that I'm going through, this is the challenge, and like getting her to almost be like a bit of a teammate with that sort of stuff. And then like the other parts that I've talked about from a life perspective, like tariffs and big business stuff, it's almost a bit like fight or flight for me at the moment, where it's like, okay, like these are big things that like I've got to find solutions for, and that kind of excites me. That like gets me going, rather than just the monotony of running a business. It's still shit, don't get me wrong, but it's something that I do get off on, in terms of, okay, now is where I can try and really use my intelligence. Who knows if I'll be able to do it, but yeah, so it's interesting. Again, it's all walking the threshold of complete exhaustion in both of those areas.
So, Katie, what are the numbers for Johnny then? If we do one battery, you're the accountant. I wasn't an accountant.
Johnny was 30-40 on his training.
Yeah, and 60-70 on life. So let's go 70-40. So he's 50-50.
Yeah.
So you've dropped as well, Johnny, in 3 weeks.
And I think that's completely understandable. I think every athlete, and you probably know it too, as an athlete, as you build into a big competition, often your batteries do drop down, and you're riding that fine line between doing too much going into a big event. And that's why you find that you do a big event and then you get sick afterwards, or you're in that burnout and you just can't function afterwards, because you've run that line so close.
And I guess that's why a lot of people will look at mainly you guys. I did this all years ago and go, what are they doing? Is this really worth it? Like, they're not pros. Like,
But
because I think the logic I get back to is we're cut from a similar cloth.
Yeah.
But I think this is where this discussion is so important because, like, say I've been doing it the last couple of weeks with Katie of just going like, how are you actually doing what you're doing? Like on a simple level, like how the fuck did you run a marathon and then run a 5K PB afterwards? But it's just how you doing the volume of the training around your work. But within this 30-minute conversation, we've been able to unpack like, okay, it's really not that rosy, right? And like, A, this is how I'm doing it, but B, like, it's pretty fucking shit in some parts as well. And I think people, to truly, like those people that are at the gym and that have those questions on what we're doing, like, I think this gives them that perspective that is like, whether like they still think we're fucking nutcases or whatever, but I think, you know, at the very least, you stop those excuses of people saying that they don't have time or whatever it is, or like, I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of shit that everyone goes through that I think having these discussions is super important.
And I think you asked that question, boss, is it worth it? I'd say yes, because it brings me joy and enjoyment. And if I wasn't spending as much time in the gym, yeah, I could be out socializing and doing that sort of stuff. Or I guess a lot of the time people go home after work and watch TV. I don't love doing that. I'd just be sitting on my ass. I'd rather go to the gym and train and do some exercise. And so for me, it is worth it. And yeah.
It's just one quick one. I know you're awake, Johnny, now, so I thought I'd get one to you guys before you go. No, I'm really curious. As an outsider, do you know, when is it... what am I trying to ask? Do you know where the point comes where you sit there and go, actually, this is too much now? In terms, say I'm Katie, this is too much now. Angus has had a word to me and said, you know, my performance is shit. I'm letting the business down. Do you get to that point where, do you know where that point is and go, fuck, this is too much. I'm letting Angus down, Bopple. I'm all about Hyrox and CrossFit because I love it and I get a kick out of it and this is what I do. Like in your case, that side. And Johnny, do you also know this is affecting my marriage too much now? I'm taking it too far. This is affecting my business because of the tariffs and everything. I'm not giving that enough time and effort. Do you both know where that point is, do you think?
I think yes, but then it comes back to, and I don't know if Johnny, you might not have, but I know that me, Yops and Boss have all, and I'm in the middle of listening to the podcast by Mel Robbins and with Jay Shetty, and it talks about passion. So for me at that point, if and when, and I think conversations around this is going to be had in the next, I don't know, because I know that I am dropping the ball, but it comes back to what are you the most passionate about and what means the most to you. And so for me, it will be me weighing up, okay, where do I actually, which balls do I not mind dropping? Do I not mind dropping the work one? Is it the training one? Okay, training, I actually get the most passion and this is what I enjoy the most. How, if my job right now isn't going to fit for this, then what can I do to change so that I can fit, that I can continue training how I am, and that it doesn't matter if I drop all those other things that I'm doing. And I think at that point the conversations are had and then you just adjust accordingly. But it's just knowing what is the most important to you at that time or in the future. If I had a partner and kids and stuff, I think that would be the more important thing. But Johnny can probably speak more to that side of things.
So are you just saying push comes to shove, the training is going to take priority?
Not necessarily. It depends on where I'm at. Probably right now, yes. But again, it depends on the time of year. It depends on where I'm at. Yeah.
Johnny, you get the question?
Yeah, I dropped off for a little bit there, but it's a tough one. I think, do I know when I've gone too far? Yes. Do I stop it? No. I think Angus said something like that last week in terms of some of my negatives. I think, you know, I'm notorious in terms of when I've got an injury, I'll keep going until it's torn off the bone. So yeah, I wish I would say that I'm smarter, but I'm not in that degree. But I think what is evident with, hopefully with Katie and I, is that we do have a degree of self-awareness in hindsight, that we're not afraid to pull ourselves up after, you know, we fucked up, whether it's in work or in training. And, you know, hopefully my staff at work would attest to that, where I'm not a blame shifter. Like if something happens, like I'll probably take the sword more often than not, even if it's not my fault. And with training, I'm probably similar. Like I'll definitely give myself a crack if I've, you know, missed something or done something. Again, in hindsight, you know, it's not necessarily before. Like I've still got to go through the embarrassment of doing it. So I think Kelly would agree with that as well. But I think, again, that's kind of half the excitement as well, is that we're constantly trying to push the barriers in all aspects of our life, whether it's training, relationships, work. You know, what is possible? What can we get away with? You know, and I think it's good in a way. You know, I think if you're sprinting or doing things at the same pace the whole time, then that is also not the best way to get performance, right? You've got to have some light and shade in your life. You know, so, you know, that's probably an optimistic way to look at it, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to, you know, or sometimes, you know, fleet around, you know, are you doing too much? Are you taking things too far?
Has Kelly said anything to you?
It's always been an aspect in our relationship, like, and definitely since we've had kids, and definitely since we've had 2 kids, of okay, do you really need to be training 2 hours or 2.5 hours, you know, from 4 a.m. to 6:30? Like, that's now a bit ridiculous, isn't it?
And how do you answer that?
I don't really. I now I tell her what I'm doing, and rather than saying nothing, or like just being defensive, it's like, you know, it was just a big day, and like, this is what I'm doing, and this is what it's for. But, you know, in a lot of cases, she's right. Like, do I really need to be at the gym from 4 to 6:30? Like, you know, on a simple level, can't I just go from 4 to 5:30 and then do another session at lunch where it doesn't affect the family, or that sort of stuff? So I think there's probably easier solves to it that don't necessarily affect my training.
I think you skirted around that question as well, Johnny. So when she's saying to you, do you really need to do this for 2 hours? What's the answer to her?
Well, I think where she's coming from is like, okay, so the kids wake up at, you know, 6 a.m. or in Miller's case, you know, as soon as I leave the house. So, you know, anything more than, you know, being gone for 10 minutes is a bit of an inconvenience, right? And understandably so. Like, I don't know what the answer is, but ultimately, like, there's a volume of training that you need to be doing, right, for this event. And it's, you know, especially at this level, right, or this level that we're both trying to get to. So, and that's not going to be done from a 1 hour a day gym session, right? So,
does she understand that?
Yeah, she does, for sure. It's just like, how long. I think it's more of a question of like, Kelly's great when she knows that there's a bit of a time limit on it, but if it's 2.5 hours every day in perpetuity, then that's a bit ridiculous.
Is it also that she knows there's a time limit to Worlds, and then it may sort of slow down, you'll go back to doing normal stuff? Does that give her some peace?
Yeah, for sure. But again, like, in her defense, it's like, when I involve her in that process of like, okay, this is for the bigger picture, or this is for this, rather than like, this is selfish Johnny taking 2.5 hours a day every day to do what he wants to do, then that's hard. That'd be hard for anyone, right? But if it's part of a bit bigger context, then sure.
I've got one more, Katie. Sorry. I can't let this go.
Fuck.
I know, I've got to go.
I've
2
got on the
seconds.
treadmill running soon.
2 seconds. You mentioned just then that you know you've dropped the ball at work.
Mm.
What do you mean? Take me through that. And how do you feel about that?
Oh, that's what I'm hugely struggling with at the moment. That has been this week's biggest in the last few weeks, is knowing that that's just dropping. I just don't have the mental capacity sometimes to be able to, I'm in my role as CFO, I need to be exploring opportunities and looking and identifying areas that we can grow and RevOps and everything like that. But some days I just don't have the mental capacity to be thinking big picture outside of the box and sort of trying to grow the business. I can do the standard stuff that finance numbers, like they come easy to me, but it's trying to think outside of that box. And I've just realized, I know that I sit there at work and I'm like, I need to be doing this stuff, but I just don't have the clarity or the mental capacity to do it. Yeah, and that's probably not a great answer, but that's sort of, and I just know that that's where I'm dropping the ball and I'm struggling. And I know that I think for the next 7 weeks it's going to be a struggle, but it's also me just trying to figure out exactly like what I love doing. And I think this podcast that I'm listening to at the moment is really good for prompting that, to figure out what I'm passionate about or what I'm great at doing, and then leaning into that.
Oh, we could go for hours on that one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Johnny.
I also love Boss, that I feel like this is tapping into like a unique side that's getting you excited about, that yes, we can talk about training, but it can like unpack some like much deeper conversations. I think for me, like I love the opportunity each week to talk about the shit that's going on in my head in this domain, like, and to be really selfish, like this is a positive for me that I think is helping like increase that barrier, because it's verbalizing the shit that's in my head. It's verbalizing, what is ultimately stuff that a lot of people go through, but also some unique qualities that each of us are going through as well. And at the end of the day, it's not as bad as what it seems, but also like in some cases it's like it may be the bleeding obvious of like fuck, why am I actually still doing it? Like that is actually pretty ridiculous. So I think
it's been awesome. I feel like a shrink now.
Yeah, as a takeaway, like it's one of the overused, kind of catch cries of just talking about it. Like I think it's a little bit more complex than that. It's finding a setting where you can talk about the big things in your life, like with almost like an untapped time limit to an almost untapped depth level, to really kind of work through some of these things that are ultimately in our head. We're not looking for anyone's answers, right? We're just working through it.
And it's being prompted with the right sort of questions to push you in the direction to think about what's going on in your head.
Yeah, I think, this week's been good. Every week's been good. It just goes down different avenues. For me, I just walked away with, how long do you keep doing all this before the fucking cracks start appearing? And do you guys, even though you say you do, and I don't believe you, do you really know that, the cracks are going to just open up like a big dam, which is quite interesting, and it's affecting your lives in different areas. But you're so passionate and you love this so much, and this, like me, this is my therapy, this is my drug. If I couldn't exercise, what would I do? I don't know. This is what gets me through my business and everything else. And yeah, this will be interesting the next few weeks to see if you're, Katie's unemployed at Centrelink and Johnny's business is gone. And but I love what I do. I got to keep training because I want to do 59 minutes in Sydney in 2035. I don't care about everything else. I don't need money. Can someone sponsor me, please? I've got no money.
Boss Money's going to sponsor us both. We're going to be full-time athletes.
Yes, exactly.
I was looking at your socks, Katie, and I was going, she doesn't even know how to put the right socks on because left's on the right and right's on the left, but she had her feet crossed over. Fuck, I'm lucky I didn't say anything. All right, Johnny, we'll let you go to sleep. Thank you for coming on board all the way from London.
No worries. Thank you, team.
Have a good sleep.
You know when you've taken it too far, Johnny? when you miss your wife's birthday. Thank you, everyone. I'll leave it on that. See you later.
No.
See you, bye.
Welcome to Joe Rogan.